Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep on something pretty huge happening over in Europe.
Yeah, things are getting
It's
interesting.
Yeah, it's the German auto industry and specifically Volkswagen. They might be on the verge of a pretty historic shakeup.
For sure.
We're talking potential factory closures in Germany.
Wow.
Massive layoffs, the kind of stuff that can really send shockwaves through an entire economy.
Absolutely. And, Volkswagen in Germany, it's not just a company.
Right.
I mean, it's like woven into the fabric of their national identity, their economic strength. So for them to even be considering these moves, it's really unprecedented.
So to break it all down, we got a whole stack of sources.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at, we've got that breaking news from Reuters about those potential plant closures and layoffs at Volkswagen.
Okay.
We've got the latest from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, the ACEA with their September 2024 car sales data.
Got it. Some really insightful analysis from Clean Technica on the rise of those Chinese automakers.
Yeah.
And those EU tariffs that everyone's been talking about.
Right.
And then to kind of round it all out, we've got some really sharp commentary from The Guardian on the broader challenges facing the entire European car industry.
Yeah, you put all this together and it's like this picture emerges of just this intense pressure facing not just Volkswagen, but like the whole European automotive landscape.
Yeah. And I mean, that Reuters article really didn't pull any punches.
Yeah.
They are saying that Volkswagen's labor chief is warning of at least 3 German plants.
Wow.
Shutting down tens of thousands of jobs lost.
Yeah.
And get this, salary cuts of at least 10%.
Oof.
At the Volkswagen brand.
It's a lot.
Yeah, this is...
And they made it clear in the article.
Yeah.
This isn't just some kind of negotiating tactic.
Right.
Like Volkswagen is really caught in this perfect storm of challenges.
Yeah, like you've got these high energy and labor costs in Germany, making it harder and harder to compete globally.
Yeah.
And then you've got this relentless competition from Asian car makers, especially in the EV market where all the growth is happening.
Yeah, and it's not just about competition.
Right.
Our sources are also saying that demand in these key markets for Volkswagen, like Europe and China, is weakening.
For sure.
And then to top it all off, the transition to electric vehicles has been a lot slower than people were expecting.
Right.
So you have companies like Volkswagen stuck in this really awkward in-between phase.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, what does this all mean for like the average person?
Right.
Even if you aren't driving a Volkswagen, these forces are impacting the types of cars you're going to be able to buy, how much they'll cost.
Right.
And ultimately the future of transportation itself.
Yeah, this isn't just some far-off German drama playing out across the ocean.
Right.
This could trigger economic troubles globally.
Right.
Yeah.
Job losses that ripple out far beyond just the auto industry.
For sure.
This could even reshape global trade as we know it.
I mean, this whole situation with Volkswagen, it's really a symptom of a much bigger change that's underway, one that's redrawing the entire automotive map.
And speaking of redrawing the map, I think it's time we talk about the elephant in the room.
Uh-oh.
China.
Yeah.
The rise of Chinese automakers.
It's just a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And it's about so much more than just cheap Chinese cars.
Right. And both Clean Technica and The Guardian are really highlighting the speed at which these companies are growing.
Yeah.
Their aggressive push to capture that European market and the EU's response with those tariffs.
But, it feels like this is about more than just, like, protecting European companies.
Right. For sure.
Chinese companies are pouring money into EV technology.
Yeah.
And they're building up their production capacity at an incredible pace.
Yeah. They're not just competing on price anymore.
Yeah.
They're aiming to be the technological leaders in the electric vehicle space.
That's a wake-up call for the European auto industry, right?
Totally.
You can't just coast on past successes.
Right.
You can't keep doing things the same way.
You got to adapt.
Yeah.
Innovate.
Yeah.
Figure out how to compete in this new world that's changing so rapidly.
Yeah. And
And the Guardian article really drives this point home.
Yeah.
You know those slogans about German engineering and technological dominance? They're starting to sound a little hollow.
Right.
In the face of this new wave of competition.
Yeah.
European automakers need to find their Vorsprung again.
Yeah.
But it's going to take some bold moves and some really tough choices.
And those choices aren't going to be easy.
No.
Especially for companies like Volkswagen with such deep roots in their home countries.
Right.
You know, it's one thing to talk about shutting down factories in some theoretical way.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing to actually do it. Knowing how it's going to impact workers, communities, national pride.
It's huge.
Right.
The human cost of this transition is something we can't ignore.
Yeah.
And policymakers are really going to have to weigh this carefully.
Right.
Like, how do you balance that need to stay competitive with the need to protect jobs and support those people who are going to be hit the hardest by these changes?
It's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. There are no easy answers here.
Yeah.
But one thing is clear. The automotive industry is at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And the choices being made right now will have massive ripple effects on the future of transportation, the economy, and even the environment.
And speaking of choices and ripple effects, let's dig into that surprising finding from that ACEA report.
Okay.
Hybrid electric vehicles, or HEVs, they outsold petrol-powered cars in the EU for the first time ever in September 2024.
Wow. So what's going on there?
Yeah, what does that tell us about what consumers actually want and how fast this EV transition is actually happening? That's what we'll be unpacking in part 2 of this deep dive.
Can't wait. So we just left off talking about this surge in hybrid sales.
Yeah.
And it really adds another layer of complexity to this whole EV transition story, you know?
It does. You've got policymakers pushing full steam ahead for everyone to go electric.
Right.
But it seems like consumers are maybe
pumping the brakes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Because hybrids offer this kind of stepping stone approach.
Right.
You get some of the electric driving perks.
Yeah.
Better fuel efficiency, fewer emissions.
Right.
But you don't have to fully commit to that whole EV lifestyle just yet.
Yeah, and let's be real, range anxiety is a big deal for a lot of people.
Totally.
And even though EV prices are coming down, they're still usually more expensive than a comparable petrol or hybrid model.
Sure.
So for a lot of folks, a hybrid just makes more sense right now, practically speaking.
Absolutely. And this is where that ACEA report gets really interesting.
Yeah.
In September 2024, for the first time ever, hybrid electric vehicle sales in the EU overtook sales of petrol-powered cars.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, are consumers sending a message here?
It does make you think, is this hybrid surge just a temporary blip?
Right.
Or is it something more significant?
Yeah, are people just not as ready to jump into fully electric vehicles as some policymakers might have hoped?
It's a valid question.
It is.
And it underscores the fact that the success of this EV transition hinges on a lot more than just the technology itself. We're talking infrastructure, consumer behavior, government policies, and even those global trade dynamics we touched on earlier.
Exactly. It's this intricate web.
Yeah.
And if you want to see a sustainable shift towards electric mobility, all those strands need to be working together.
Yeah, it's a complex ecosystem.
Totally. And if we circle back to Volkswagen for a moment,
that
Reuters article really lays bare the predicament they're facing.
It does. They're feeling the heat from all sides.
Yeah.
You remember that quote from their labor chief?
She called it the plan of Germany's largest industrial group to start the sell-off in its home country of Germany.
Wow.
It's a stark statement.
Yeah.
And you really have to wonder what the ripple effects would be if Volkswagen actually goes through with shutting down multiple factories.
It would be seismic, no question.
Yeah.
I mean, for almost a century, Volkswagen has been a cornerstone of German industry.
Right.
A source of jobs, a symbol of national pride. And it's not just the jobs directly at Volkswagen either.
Right.
It's that whole ecosystem of suppliers, dealerships, all the businesses that depend on them.
And don't forget, this is all happening against the backdrop of an already shaky German economy.
Oh, yeah. They're dealing with rising energy costs, inflation, a global economy that's not exactly firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, this situation with Volkswagen could be a real tipping point.
Yeah.
Not just for the company itself, but for Germany as a whole.
And that Reuters piece also touched on the political dimension of all of this.
Oh, yeah. With federal elections coming up next year, Chancellor Scholz is already trailing in the polls.
Oh, wow.
This Volkswagen situation has the potential to become a major campaign issue.
Yeah.
Put even more pressure on the government to find solutions.
Talk about a political headache.
Right.
But to kind of zoom out a bit, it's important to remember that this isn't just a German problem.
Right.
This is a global shift in the balance of power within the automotive industry, with China emerging as a real force to be reckoned with.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
That Clean Technica article about China urging their domestic automakers to hold back on their expansion plans in the EU.
Yeah.
That was fascinating.
It was.
It really shows how complex this situation is.
Yeah.
You know, on one hand, China's clearly going for global dominance in the EV market.
Yeah.
But they're also being strategic about it.
Right.
Trying to avoid escalating those trade tensions with the EU.
It's a delicate dance.
It is. They're playing the long game, for sure. And that article pointed out how some Chinese automakers are already adapting their strategies.
Yeah.
BYD, one of the biggest players in the Chinese EV market, is forging ahead with plans to build factories in Hungary and Turkey.
Interesting.
Clever, right?
Yeah.
That way they can sidestep those EU tariffs and get a stronger foothold in Europe.
It's a savvy move.
It is.
And it speaks volumes about how these Chinese companies are thinking ahead.
Right.
You know, they're not just reacting to the current market.
Right.
They're anticipating future trends and positioning themselves for long-term success.
Which is a wake-up call for those European automakers.
Right.
You can't just rely on those old formulas.
Yeah.
You got to adapt, innovate, find ways to compete in this new world.
And the Guardian article was really driving at that point.
It was all those slogans about German engineering and technological prowess.
Yeah.
Starting to ring a little hollow in the face of this competition.
Yeah.
European automakers, they need to rediscover their Vorsprung.
Uh-huh.
But it's going to require bold action and some potentially tough choices.
And those choices are going to be all the more difficult for companies like Volkswagen that are so deeply intertwined with their home countries.
Absolutely.
Shutting down factories, laying off workers. That's not just about spreadsheets and bottom lines.
Right.
It's about impacting people's lives, communities, even national pride.
It's huge. And policymakers have to consider this very carefully.
Yeah.
How do you find that balance between staying competitive and protecting jobs and those most vulnerable?
It's a tough question.
It is.
And there's no easy answer.
No, but here's what's undeniable. The auto industry is at a crossroads.
It is.
And the decisions being made today will have huge consequences for the future of transportation, the economy, even the environment.
And on that note, let's shift gears a bit and delve into a topic that's closely related to all of this.
Yeah.
That surprising surge in hybrid electric vehicle sales.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems like consumers might be sending a message about their preferences and concerns.
Right. What are the implications of this trend, and how does it fit into the bigger picture of the EV transition?
Yeah.
That's what we'll explore in part 3 of this deep dive.
Okay, so we've been talking about this huge wave of change in the auto industry, and now we're going to zoom in on this curveball everyone's been talking about. Hybrid electric vehicles.
Hybrids.
HEVs, they're not just along for the ride, they're actually outselling those traditional petrol-powered cars in the EU.
It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
You have this big push for full electrification, but then you see hybrids selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if people aren't quite sold on EVs yet.
It really does. It's like people are maybe,
dipping their toes.
Yeah, just testing the waters before they fully commit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hybrids give you that kind of bridge, You can get a taste of electric driving, the fuel efficiency, lower emissions.
Right.
But you don't have to go all in on the EV lifestyle just yet.
Yeah. And let's be honest, range anxiety, that fear of running out of charge on the highway.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Plus, EVs are still usually a bigger investment up front.
Yeah, even with prices coming down.
Right, exactly.
They're still not quite there yet compared to gas or hybrid cars.
So for a lot of people, it's a hybrid just makes more sense right now.
It's practical.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting about this ACEA report.
Yeah.
For the first time ever in the EU, hybrid sales beat out gas-powered cars last month.
In September.
September 2024. Yeah, it really makes you think,
It does.
Are consumers trying to tell us something?
Yeah. Are they maybe not as ready to jump on the EV bandwagon as some folks thought?
Right.
So is this surge in hybrid sales just a temporary thing?
Yeah.
Or is this a sign of something bigger?
Like a fundamental shift.
Yeah. Are people just not as into EVs as some policymakers might have hoped?
It's a good question, and it shows how the success of EVs isn't just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about building that whole ecosystem around it. The charging stations, consumer education,
Yeah, making them affordable.
Exactly. And making sure they're practical for everyday life.
So it's like all these different pieces.
It's a puzzle.
Yeah, that need to fit together.
Right. And if any of those pieces are missing,
that
whole transition to EVs is going to be a lot harder.
So for our listeners out there, what should they be watching for as this all plays out?
We'll keep an eye on Volkswagen for sure.
Yeah. Are they actually going to go through with shutting down those factories?
Right. What's the German government going to do?
How will this impact the European economy and the rest of the world?
Huge questions.
Yeah, and we can't forget about China.
Oh, yeah. China's a major player here.
Huge player.
And they're not slowing down anytime soon. So watch how they keep expanding globally.
Right, how they deal with those trade tensions.
Yeah, and how they compete for market share.
It's going to be interesting, and I think maybe most importantly, we need to pay attention to what consumers are doing.
What are people actually buying?
Yeah, are they going all in on EVs, or are they sticking with hybrids for now?
What matters most to them?
Yeah, what are their concerns? At the end of the day, it's consumers who are really in the driver's seat.
Absolutely. Their decisions will shape the future of the car industry.
So the next time you're thinking about getting a new car, remember, you're not just buying a car.
It's so much more than that.
You're part of this huge story about technology competition, global economics, the future of how we get around.
Our choices matter.
Yeah, they really do. They're all connected to these bigger forces that are shaping the world.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the auto industry.
It has.
Things are changing so fast.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time.
And it's clear that the road ahead is full of twists and turns.
For sure. But you know what they say, with uncertainty comes opportunity.
Yeah.
Maybe this shakeup is exactly what the industry needs to innovate and create a better future for transportation.
A more sustainable future.
Absolutely, one that works for everyone.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those engines running and keep your eyes on the road ahead.